Maria. It's Maria. It's my favorite character in all of Castlevania, although this version of Maria is very different from the version of Maria in Rondo of Blood that I first fell in love with. What's up, Earth Rockers? It's me, Shovatar, here to tell you about another wacky-ass alternate version of the game in Symphony of the Night. Maria mode is similar to Richter mode in a lot of ways. It's similar broadly in that it is sort of just a single-minded rampage through the entire castle, where very little is overtly threatening to you. And in this route that I'll be taking here, nothing is going to be that threatening to me. Unless, of course, I set out with the objective of beating the game with Maria in 10 minutes or less of actual player control time. The thing that a time limit does for Maria mode, especially an aggressive time limit like this, is that it limits the number of times you can utilize Maria's super invincibility power, which is why I'm glowing green here, and sort of what the entire fast route is built around. My goal here is to maintain this, is to reach the second skeleton here with the invincibility buff still on, and I think I barely get it. Yep, on like the last possible frame practically, because I fucked up the jumps through the little gaps, and because I made sure to turn on the invincibility as far into the first dog hallway as I could. The toughest part of a fast route like this for Maria is the movement in the laboratory, and here it's not great. It's not my best movement. I make several mistakes, not really in this part so much, but in the later rooms. Like here, no, this is the smoothest. Okay, that's the smoothest, like, first tough alchemy room I've done. This one I bonked my head a couple times, and this is the first big mistake, which is that if I'm fast enough, sometimes I can run underneath that guy without getting hit, but there, unfortunately, not the case. So to speak about Maria mode more generally, Maria is an interesting character. She has a very high... Here's the thing. Her invincibility power-up is the thing that both makes her overpowered and also makes her, like, too easy. Where... Oh, and another thing to mention here is that Maria has a couple of special movements like Richter does. She has a direct upwards, like, super jump, and then she sort of has like a diagonal super jump. I don't do the diagonal super jump here because the diagonal super jump is still mostly vertical, and because I'm not... It's a super precise thing, because it's like you have to be up diagonal, and if you go too far up, you do the regular super jump. If you go too far to the left or right, you don't do anything at all. So that's why I just use the invincibility to get through that part. And here this is the big time saver that really made the biggest difference, is maintaining my dash through all of these jumps by just hitting the control stick really fucking hard whenever I landed. Because that was sort of the biggest difference maker in terms of getting the time down. And here I utilize invincibility for this hallway. But for the next hallway, I think no, the invincibility should still be up for the next hallway, I think. Because that's the thing about, like, trying to do Maria mode fast, is figuring out when do you use invincibility and when do you not use invincibility. And if you choose not to use invincibility, then your health kind of becomes an important resource you can utilize to get through places fast. And you'll see what I mean in a little bit. The Hippogriff is the big problem in fast Maria clear like this, because if it stays on the ground and does its fire breath, great. You get to drop holy water on it and kick it over and over again. If it flies up in the air, you gotta, like, try to super jump it, and the super jumps do 80 damage, which isn't bad, but I feel like it would be better if it just stayed on the ground instead of ever going up into the sky. And here I don't have enough magic power regenerated to invincibility through this hallway, so I just have to try to dash through and hope that I end up on the far side of those skeleton guys when I hit them, like with that third guy, instead of just knocking right into them and getting knocked back like with those first two. That's kind of a up in the air thing. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And here is a part that I iterated on many times as I was planning this route out, where sometimes I would use invincibility to get through this part, because as you can see, I have a lot of magic power saved up that I'm not really using. But I ultimately decided that I wanted to use full magic... Well, first of all, it takes some magic power to do these special jumps, and this is not a really good... that movement was not great. Optimally, I would do diagonal forward jump as soon as I get over the first stairwell, which is what I think I was trying to do, but I think I screwed up the input for it. The reason that I don't invincibility back there, even though I think I technically have the magic power to do it, is because that was so annoying. There were so many runs where I didn't hit the 10-minute mark that I wanted to because I lost like a couple seconds just trying to get the fucking teleporter to activate. It's the fucking worst. The reason that I want to save up for full magic power here is because I want to use full invincibility to get through the tombstones at the end of the reverse keep, and then I want to use full invincibility pretty much immediately after that again in order to get through another part of the anti-chapel. And for that to work, I basically need to do it like this. I need to utilize invincibility with full MP, so that way by the time it's over, I've regenerated enough to basically be able to use it again instantly. So even though I'm left with a lot of unused MP in the section with the knights and with most of the keep in general, it ultimately worked the best for the route to just use kicks to kill the knights and then save and then use full MP to get through the tombstone area to have full MP when I get through one of the chapel hallways. I don't remember where or when. This is why. It's because I lose invincibility when I go through the loading screen. So I want to regain it as quickly as I possibly can. And here's what I mean when I talk about utilizing health as a resource, where I took a lot of damage hitting that cat, but I kind of needed to in order to get through that area without invincibility. And what I really want is to use invincibility as soon as Medusa is dead and get through the next 2 hallways and optimally get all the way to Olrox as quickly as possible. And the reason that I'm going to use, or rather get all the way to the Colosseum as quickly as possible. So that's what I wanted to do here. I wanted to make sure I had enough MP to do this almost immediately. And that's super important because trying to get through these hallways without invincibility would basically mean I would have to take time picking up the health from the Medusa and trying to get through this next section here without invincibility is just a fucking crapshoot because you can get stun locked by the imps, you can get hit by the snipers, and it's another case of just I'm not really very good at navigating this quickly. I'm not good at like utilizing super jumps to like just kill whatever imps might be above me. I'd much rather just use regular jumps to go one platform at a time and not have to worry about them. And this was how I decided to do that. And so the reason that I didn't pick up the health from the Medusa head, or from the Medusa boss rather, is because I'm going to be going through the rest of this entire route using the invincibility. I don't plan to take another point of damage for the rest of the entire game. So being able to utilize my health exactly as much as I had to was a big component of this. And as you can see, I think I'm going to get to the end of this. I'm going to get to this room with, I just barely don't have enough MP to use invincibility here, or maybe I screwed up the timing, I don't know, but I get it here. That first one was either a false alarm, was either like I didn't have enough MP or I screwed up the input, I'm really not sure, but I more or less had the MP for that room with the Minotaurs and the werewolves as soon as I got there, which is exactly what I wanted. And that was all, and all that had to do with figuring out, because and that was worth it. Like the fact that it was so close is not really great, but that was all worth it to get through those parts of the chapel that I needed to get through. So it was just a question of where am I willing to what sections am I willing to get through without the use of invincibility? And the most obvious section to cut was that section in the normal castle keep with the knights in the hallway. And we are almost at the end of the game. I just have to get to Shaft and defeat him, and then it's all going to be over. And you will never guess what I do to defeat Shaft. I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with invisibility. It doesn't rhyme with invisibility. It rhymes with binvincibility. And I think I have a pretty smooth jump up into the cage here. Let's find out. Something that I didn't even consider when setting out to beat the game in 10 minutes with Maria, as opposed to beating the game, yep, that's pretty smooth, beating the game in 10 minutes with Richter, was how the Sega Saturn's loading times would actually create a significant obstacle in that vein, where a lot of the time that like a lot of the time that I'm spending is not being spent playing as Maria. It's just waiting for the fucking loading to happen. Like here, and I think this is pretty fucking close. I'm looking at the playback right now, and I'm 10 minutes and like 15 seconds in right now, and I think it took me like 20 seconds of menuing to start up actually playing as Maria. So we'll see how fast this is. Okay, that's not bad. That could have been a lot faster actually, but oh well. That's still pretty good. I reached my goal. I gained control of Maria at like 35 seconds, and I think Shaft died there at like 10:26. So barely 10 minutes of playtime, which was my goal, and which ended up taking a lot more attempts than Richter Mode did, which is the opposite of what I was expecting. Richter Mode, I got under 10 minutes, like without even on like my second or third attempt. Even though I thought it was going to take way longer than that, because the first fast Richter Mode attempt I did took like 12.5 minutes, I think. And I was like, how am I going to cut 2.5 minutes off this? And it turned out the answer to that question was just air dash more, dummy. So that's what I did. With Maria, it took several more attempts because I think just the quantity of loading meant that I needed to basically build a better route and then clean up some really minute movement in the laboratory and then in the opening to get it to work. And it was really about routing. It was really about getting the most out of every invincibility. Like making sure that I could use the first invincibility of the entire run to get through those first two skeletons. That was pretty good. And then the big innovation that made it work was making sure that I could use invincibility again right after the Medusa boss to get through those two hallways and get through the last long vertical section of the Anti-Chapel. And then once I had that figured out, it was like it all worked. And unfortunately, this is another fucking freeze frame because I didn't realize when I was collecting the Saturn footage that OBS and Mednafen don't play 100% nice together. I'm very sorry about this. I really wish this was not the way that it is, and I wish that the footage looked totally normal, but it's just credits, you know. I'm sure you can look up the credits yourself if you want to. That's not a very good thing to say. I don't know. I'm sorry, basically, but I really don't want to like go back and try to collect this footage again. I'm all Symphony of the Nighted out, especially this footage because this footage was actually kind of tough to get. The under 10 minute stipulation was a lot harder to reach than I thought it was going to be. So now that the run is actually over, I think I might have some time to talk about Maria Mode more generally. Maria Mode is really odd. I think like I started to say at the beginning, it's similar to Richter Mode in that you just kind of run through and kill everything for different reasons, and as I started to say in the chapel, her invincibility spell is what makes her as overpowered as Richter, and also what makes you really not have to engage with a lot of her other tools, which I think is not great, because a lot of her other tools are really cool. She has 5 or 6 spells, I think, and if you watch the all bosses footage, I think about half of them. There's a couple that I don't use. I don't use the turtle spell, I don't use the dragon spell, and I don't use the owl spell because they're really not... Either they're not necessary, they're not very good, or in the case of the dragon spell, I just couldn't figure out the input and I couldn't figure out how to control it, because the dragon spell is more complicated than just using the input. You use the input and the dragon shows up, and then you can like somehow control the dragon with the control stick, but I could never figure it out, and it always seemed like the temptation to just use the invincibility power is always there if you really need to kill something, which is kind of what the dragon spell seemed like it was designed for. It was just like, you need to kill one thing, just use the invincibility spell. Other than that, Maria has her Metroid laser, which unfortunately is not very good because it doesn't do that much damage with with her regular like shot. And if you take the time to hold down the button and charge it up, you're now taking a lot more time to kill something that you probably could have just killed with like a flying kick, or with a couple of kicks, or with like her lightning punch attack. So she has a lot of tools, and by her very nature, most of the tools go unused, which I guess isn't that different from Richter Mode in that Richter has access to a lot of sub-weapons that, generally speaking, you're probably not going to use because the holy water is just always the best option. What's interesting about Maria is the fact that she doesn't cap out at 99 hearts the way Richter does. She has like basically infinite hearts, which I think means that you're supposed to put more of an emphasis on utilizing the sub-weapons. But again, most of the sub-weapons have the same problem that her regular magic shot does, and that they don't do enough damage. The cross is kind of the big exception to that, which is why I use the cross all the time in my all bosses run as soon as it's available, because the cross actually fucking does damage. And the holy water actually also does fucking damage, but it doesn't do as much damage as the Alucard mode holy water does, which is annoying. So I still swap it out as soon as I can. And I think that's all I have to say about Maria mode. It's pretty fun. It's definitely worth doing. It might be interesting, like, to do a challenge run where you challenge yourself to beat Maria mode without ever using the invincibility, which could work fine. I think the only exception to that would be the Galamoth fight. I don't know how you would beat Galamoth without the invincibility upgrade, and it's possible that the invincibility power was put in there specifically for Galamoth. I don't know. Beyond that, though, the only problem with doing that is that if you're using like magic attacks to kill everything, which you are incentivized to do, I think, because a lot of things have more health so that they can't really die in a couple kicks, you're going to spend a lot of time standing around waiting for magic to regenerate. So I think it's more about just finding a natural rhythm of when to use what spells, and not to maybe overuse the invincibility spell, but also not to shy away from using it, if using it would be the most efficient use of your MP and your time. So that's my really quick review of Maria mode. That's how fast I have to make it, because I don't think I could talk about it for an hour, sorry. Hope you guys enjoyed this footage. Next up, some Dracula X Chronicles PSP port footage, which is mostly going to be not interesting except for the PSP Maria mode. Enjoy when it comes.